Today's video is sponsored by 2K. Hey, I'm back in the studio! It's still a little different because it's just me sitting in this empty room right now, but hey, it's good to be back. The Nintendo Switch has been an absolute powerhouse when it comes to ports, whether it's giving games a second chance at life they didn't really get on the original platform, or just giving us a new way to re-experience some of our favorite classics in a much more accessible way thanks to being able to play handheld, and you can still do on the TV if you prefer. And this past Friday saw the release of not one, but 3 amazing collections of games, all from 2K, that I think each have their own kind of unique reason of finding a good new home on the Switch. Specifically, Bioshock, Borderlands, and XCOM 2. For Borderlands, I think the Switch is a great home because the loot grinding genre is just one that I think really benefits from that kind of dual setup display the Switch offers. There are times where you're doing boss fights or particularly difficult fights, you're playing with friends, whatever, where having the traditional setup where you've got a Pro Controller and playing on your TV makes a lot of sense. But there's also a lot of times in loot grinders where maybe you're doing some lower level questing, maybe you're just trying to grind out certain drops that aren't particularly difficult, and being able to play that just laying back in handheld mode is a really appealing thing. Whether you're playing Borderlands 1, Borderlands 2, my personal favorite, or Borderlands the pre-sequel. XCOM 2, on the other hand, is a great fit because it's a genre that we do have some on the Switch, but there's not a ton of tactical RPGs, and XCOM 2 is among one of the best. And honestly, that's a genre that I've always found to be really nice to have in a portable handheld device. There are times where it makes sense to maybe dock it, but really for me, tactical RPGs are best done when I can just lay back and I'm entirely focused on the game in my hands. And that's exactly what the Switch lets me do with it. So yeah, both those collections are great. I think they found a good new home on the Switch, which by the way, if you are interested in checking any of these games out, there is a link down below in the description that you can click on. But really, the collection I want to focus on is the Bioshock one. And specifically, I want to talk about the original Bioshock, because that to me is something a lot more than just simply a really fun game that I'm glad to have available somewhere else now. Bioshock to me is one of the most historically significant game releases there has been. It is one of the most important games to come out in the mid-2000s. It has had a major influence on games after it, and it's one of those experiences that, in my mind, is really one that everyone should give a shot. Now, I already know what some of you all are thinking as I'm saying this. Yes, Bioshock is an amazing game, but it came out over a decade ago, it's been released multiple times, it is something I've already played. And that may be true for some of you guys watching this, and even then, honestly, just the chance to be able to play it again in handheld, I think is an amazing experience. I've been having a lot of fun playing through these games again in a handheld system. But I think something worth really pointing out is that one of the biggest deals about this game coming to the Switch, and really I think one of the biggest strengths of the Switch, is how it's opening it up to an entirely new audience. Like I said at the top of this video, there are a lot of games out there that had an okay or whatever launch on their original platform and really got a second chance at life thanks to the Switch audience. And while that obviously isn't necessarily a problem for any of these games, they've all been big hits in their own right, they've all had major success on the platforms they're already on, but I think the important thing to highlight here is that the Switch audience has a lot of people that really haven't focused on some of those previous systems. One of the big things about the Nintendo Switch is it's been a major reintroduction for a lot of people into gaming. I know a ton of people personally that haven't owned a game system in decades, and the Switch is the thing that finally got them to go, oh, yeah, I should check that out. And that's especially true right now with everything that's been going on in the world, and we've seen the fact that Switches are selling out everywhere because people are looking for new ways to entertain themselves, and this is giving them a chance to replay a lot of these amazing games they may have missed out elsewhere. Okay, so not directly related to all the reasons why I love Bioshock, but I feel like when I'm talking about it this much, I need to share what is probably one of my most bizarre gaming experiences I've ever had, which was the first time I ever played Bioshock. See, when the game was originally released, I was actually visiting family who lives out in Colorado, and they have this basement theater setup where you're underground, it's pitch black if the lights are off, and they have a projector screen set up not only for movies, but for games, which just blew my mind at the time. And so I'm booting up Bioshock for the first time ever, playing it in this theater setup, which was amazing at the start, and the very opening bits of the game like to play a lot with light. There's parts where everything goes black, there's spotlights, there's just a lot of times where it messes with what you can see and cannot see. And as I'm playing through this and having a great time, a part comes up that's meant to be a little fear-inspiring. There's kind of a weird hallucination flashback thing that happens, there's a loud screaming sound, and the moment that happened in-game, everything, projector, whole setup, goes pitch black. Now, I thought this was a part of the game and thought it was a really good kind of jump scare tactic. Little did I know, about 2 minutes later of sitting in darkness and nothing happening, the bulb actually burned out in the projector. But that definitely made my memories of the first time I played the game just stick in my head. And the thing about Bioshock coming to the Switch is that I cannot emphasize hard enough how much I think you should play this game. First off, on the surface level, I just think it's a really fun game. I mean, it combines a lot of genres that I really like. If you haven't seen it before, it's primarily an FPS RPG, so it's first-person view, you're relying on ranged weapons, but then you have different special powers you unlock, you can specialize your character certain ways, there's little puzzle-solving segments, and a lot of rewarding exploration. And alongside doing the main storyline for the game, there's little kind of side bits you can do here and there to get better stuff. But to rant about what I really absolutely love about the game and has made it one of the mainstays as far as something that I really care about, is the game's approach to narrative. It's not just something as simple as, oh, it was a good story or it was well written. It's one of the first games I remember playing where I think it did an excellent job of realizing that it's a video game. Oftentimes when you look back at some of the better written stories in games, a lot of times it ends up being a situation where that also could have made a good movie, or a good book, or a good whatever. And I'm not saying that the storyline for Bioshock couldn't do well in those things, but the way the game was written and the way certain plot points are integrated, it's really weird. I'm trying my best right now not to spoil an over-decade-long game, because while a lot of you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, I'm just hoping that those of you that have yet to experience this don't have things spoiled for you and actually get to experience it firsthand, because that, I think, is one of the most important things about the game, is just playing it with an open mind and getting the experience up front. Okay, I got a little bit off track, but the point I was trying to make about the way the game is written is that because it respects the fact that it is a video game, it isn't just simply a movie or TV show, book, or anything else, is that a lot of the plot beats and the way it's written approaches the fact that it knows that it takes active player participation, that you are a person playing this game and interacting with it and actively playing with it. And it kind of takes advantage of that fact by almost poking fun a bit at the things that you as a player take for granted. Stuff that we're used to seeing in video games and playing through. It actually kind of calls into question a little bit of, well, is that something someone would actually do plot-wise, or were you just playing the game? Even saying that little bit feels a little awkward to me, but again, it's been out for over a decade, and so what I'm really trying to emphasize here is just there's a lot of really interesting, smart things this game did for its time that have still aged exceedingly well, and if it's not something you've played through yet, it really is something I think everyone should experience at some point. And it's these narrative beats that I think are some of the longest lasting impacts that Bioshock has had on future game development. There are a lot of games that came out afterwards that I think were a little more cognizant of the concept of the fact that video game storylines are told to players, not just simply viewers. It's not like a movie where you're just watching and listening, but you are actively participating, and that is a really important thing to consider when you're doing these major plot lines for video games. Not to mention that one of the more obvious impacts of how Bioshock has an effect on storytelling is admittedly something that people like to poke fun of every now and then, which is the concept of why did every character in this game's storyline keep an audio journal lying around so you can be fully up to date on what they were up to? It's a little silly when you think about it, but when it was first introduced in Bioshock back in 2007, that was a massively amazing new idea, because it gave you a way of learning the backstory of this weird new setting that you are completely alien to in the first place. You learn the characters, you learn the relationships, you learn all these things going on, and at the same time, it is never detracting from the action in the game. You are hearing these stories being told while you're still poking and prodding, exploring, looking for different things, or even fighting enemies, but it's allowing you to stay in the action and learn about the world all at the same time, which is something that I thought was super amazingly cool when I first played it. By the way, I know I'm focusing a lot on the original Bioshock. Yes, Bioshock 2 and Infinite are also great games. There are some specific things that I think they pulled off even better than the original, but there are things about the first Bioshock, especially because it is the first one, that were just groundbreaking for its time, and I think it's really important to start there before exploring anything else. I know there's a lot of people out there who have spoken poorly about or even make fun of how many ports have come to the Switch, which is something that makes absolutely no sense to me. Because one, having a port of a game come to the Switch doesn't take anything away from the original release or any of the original new games coming to the Switch. And two, it's introducing that game that you might love to a whole new audience of people that may not have gotten the chance to play it before. And that's what really excites me about these games coming to the Switch. Not just simply the fact that they are great games that I've enjoyed playing before and now get the chance to do so again in handheld, which is a big reason. That is something that I'm really excited about. But even more so the fact there's going to be a lot of people out there who haven't gotten the chance to play these before and they get to actually play them for the first time. And that's amazing.